Hi, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Well, what is your greatest risk for all-cause mortality? And you may think, well, it's my age, right? Or, my genes, what my family was like. How about diabetes? How about metabolic syndrome or any of these other issues that we've talked about? Am I just fat? What's going to put me at the greatest risk? And frankly, this one will probably shock you. It is the amount of visceral fat that you have. Now, there's two types of fat that we're kind of familiar with. One of them is subcutaneous fat. That is our love handles, that little pooch around our waist, the fat on our thighs and stuff like that. That is subcutaneous fat. That is not what we're talking about. Visceral fat is the fat that's inside. This is how come some people can be TOFI, thin on the outside, but fat on the inside. And they are at tremendous risk of all-cause mortality. They're at the greatest risk of heart disease and strokes and every other great killer, including probably cancer. Because what it is a sign of is really poor metabolic health. What happens to the body, the way I read this stuff, is that when our fat cells, our subcutaneous fat cells, the ones that are around us, get full, the next place that the body starts to store fat is within the muscle tissues, and then it creates fat cells around our organs and our stomachs. And that is the most dangerous fat and the biggest indicator that we have got serious metabolic problems. This is a highly inflammatory fat. It keeps our organs from working effectively. When it goes around the heart, it creates extra strain around the heart. When it's on our vital organs, it's slowing down the digestive system. It's goofing things up within the body. It is very dangerous, much of a problem. That's the bad news. The good news is, hey, it's the first fat you lose. Your body wants to get rid of it as best it can, and as you switch to a low-carb diet and you become more metabolically healthy, it's the first fat the body gives up, so it's relatively easy to lose subcutaneous fat. The problem is most people aren't even aware of it, and as a result, they get kind of bummed out when they go on a low-carb diet and they don't see their clothes fitting better, but they really should be rejoicing because their that visceral fat is the first stuff that's being eaten up and gotten rid of, and reducing your risk of metabolic disease and heart disease and all-cause mortality. So it is great to get rid of it. Now, how do you figure out if you have visceral fat? Well, there's a couple of different ways. One of them is to make an appointment, go over to a medical imaging site, spend, in some states like Minnesota, it can be $1,800. In Florida, it's a few hundred. You can get your visceral fat measured. The best way to do it is with an MRI, medical, that type of imaging software, and they can give you tremendously good pictures, and you can see perfectly where the visceral fat is and what organs it's surrounding. And you can take another one after a few months of low carb and you can see it all gone, and that can be a highly satisfying thing to see. Then that's fine. You can do that if you've got the money. If you don't, frankly, just about anybody that's watching this channel, if you've got YouTube access, you have enough cash to get this tool, a tape measure. That's all you need. And the measurement that you need to take is called a waist to hip ratio. And I'll show a couple of images of where you measure, but you basically measure at the thinnest part of your waist and the widest part of your hips. And you put it into a waist-hip ratio calculator. I'll include a link to that down below. And you put that information in there, and it will tell you if it's like a 0.95, you're fine as a male, 0.9 if you're female. But that ratio has been correlated where they have taken people, done a waist-hip ratio, and then put them in the MRI. And you get basically the same results. It is a remarkably accurate test. Why doctors do not show up with a tape measure, I mean, that is like the perfect tool to quickly figure out if somebody is metabolically unhealthy and at great risk of cardiovascular disease. It's that significant. But for whatever reason, doctors only care about blood tests and LDL cholesterol. Now, when you look at the list of things that are dangerous for all-cause mortality, number one, visceral fat. After that, metabolic syndrome. Then age. Smoking status falls pretty rapidly from that. And you get down the list, maybe eventually you get to a very small point that barely shows up on the graph called LDL cholesterol. Now, but I guess they like that one because they have a pharmaceutical for that particular problem. They're not going to tell you how to lose visceral fat, because in order to do that, you need to switch to basically a low-carb diet. But like I said, the good news is it's the first thing that goes. If you want to improve your chances of surviving and living a good, healthy life, you need to get rid of the visceral fat. The way you find out if you've got it is through a tape measure, doing the waist-hip ratio calculation, and measure it after a couple of months of eating low carb, and you will find that it has gone down significantly. It is because it's the first fat to go. It's remarkable how cheap and easy it is. Now, if you don't have somebody that can do your tape measuring for you and you want to make sure it's done accurately, this is a little jewel that I found on Amazon called a Milo tape. And what's really cool about it is you don't have to fumble around trying to hope you can hold that thing accurately. What you do is you put this part in this little holder, and then they've got a little button on it, and you push the button, and it perfectly fits around your waist. And you pull it out, and you know exactly what the measurement is. It's fantastic. It's a very easy way of being able to do your own measurements of your hips and waist. And you put that into one of the online calculators, you now know. And according to the studies, it is just as accurate as using an MRI. So for the cost of a tape measure, you can find out just how big a risk you are of all-cause mortality. Not a bad deal. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a couple of messages each week talking about health, how to get yourself healthier and stronger. Frankly, in this fight for our health, we're all alone in this. The only people that are looking after your health, frankly, are you. Unless your doctor's showing up with a tape measure, you're it. So utilize the tools that you've got that can really do it. I will include links to the studies that show just how important this measurement is, how to do it effectively, and hopefully get some people to, look, if your visceral fat is really high right now, don't freak out. It's not going to kill you tonight. But if you leave it there, it will. So the good news is you can find out you've got it. The great news is it's the first fat that goes away when you switch to a low-carb diet. And when you see it go away, your chances of all-cause mortality just dropped better. This is more important to your health than even quitting smoking. And frankly, you ought to quit smoking anyway, but this is more important than that. That just ought to give you an indication how big a deal this is. Why your doctor won't talk to you about it is absolutely beyond me. It's absolutely inexcusable, but they're not. So take care of it yourself. I try to put out a couple messages each week. If you like this message, please hit the like and subscribe. Join this tribe of other people that are trying to get themselves healthy and get themselves out of the healthcare system. I will talk to you again soon.